You know, those places packed with more kinds of life than anywhere else. Yeah, rainforests. And you're already interested in them, right? So in this deep dive, we're going to look at some stuff you might not have thought about before, like
What's really cool about rainforests is that even though everyone thinks of those like hot, thick jungles, they're actually way more diverse than that.
oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's easy to just picture the Amazon when someone says rainforest, but I bet there's a lot more to it, huh?
Totally. Like the forests with tons of rain and super dense trees, those are rainforests, whether they're tropical or temperate. The Amazon or the Congo, those are your classic super humid tropical rainforests.
Gotcha. So then what about those cooler ones? What makes them different?
Well, think of like the Pacific Northwest in the US and Canada. You've got those giant evergreens, kind of mystical, almost like something out of a fairy tale. They might not have as many different species as the tropical ones, but they're still super important for the whole planet.
It's crazy that rainforests used to cover way more of the Earth, like twice as much. How did we lose so much in just 100 years?
It's kind of scary to think about, and them shrinking like that, we should all be worried because they're biodiversity hotspots. Like, imagine this. Half of all the species on land are crammed into just 6% of Earth.
Whoa, wait, 50% in just 6%. That's insane.
I know, right? And just to show you how huge this is, just the Amazon basin is thought to have something like 390 billion trees. And get this, that's like 16,000 different types of trees, all in that one area.
So it's not just like a few weird plants or bugs disappearing. It's maybe thousands of species we don't even know are there yet.
That's the scary part. Scientists think there could be 5 to 10 million species in rainforests all over the world, and we haven't even found most of them. And each one has evolved all this incredible stuff to survive, in such a tough place.
Okay, you got to give me an example. What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Okay, so think about epiphytes. Plants like orchids, growing on other plants to get to the light. They're not parasites, which is so cool. They've just figured out this genius way to thrive when sunlight's like gold.
It's like they're playing Tetris for real, squeezing into any space they can find.
Exactly. And then you've got poison dart frogs, those super bright, colorful little guys. All those crazy colors aren't just for show, though. It's a warning to anything that might eat them, like, hey, I'm toxic, don't even try it.
It's like nature's way of saying, back off, or else. But aside from all of that amazing diversity, rainforests are crucial for keeping the whole planet healthy, right?
You could say they're like the unsung heroes of Earth. Everyone always says they're the lungs of the planet because they make oxygen. That's true. But they also do this crazy thing where they affect rainfall all over the world.
So I'm trying to picture this. It's not just about the rain that falls in the rainforest itself.
Nope, not at all. It's way bigger than that. They're basically like giant humidifiers putting moisture into the atmosphere, and that ends up contributing to rain in other places. It's complicated, but their health affects weather way beyond their own borders.
And then there's that whole thing about absorbing carbon dioxide. It's super important for fighting climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. They're like giant carbon sinks, sucking up something like 2.4 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide every year. To give you an idea, that's basically the same as all the emissions from the whole U.S.
Whoa, okay, that puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
So losing rainforest isn't just losing trees. It's like we're losing what keeps our climate and atmosphere in check. Like we're messing with Earth's life support system.
Exactly. And all those iconic rainforest rivers, like the Amazon, they're the perfect example of how everything's connected.
Right. They're way more than just pretty rivers, aren't they?
Oh, for sure. The Amazon, for example, it's not just a water source. It's like a lifeline for tons of species and communities. These rivers are essential, for keeping the water cycle going, supporting all kinds of life in the water, and providing resources for millions of people.
It's like this giant chain reaction.
Yeah.
Healthy rainforests, healthy rivers, and that leads to a healthier planet for all of us. But let's be honest, it's not all sunshine and roses when we talk about rainforest, is it?
You're right. Deforestation, that's the dark cloud hanging over this whole thing.
Yeah, it's tough to talk about rainforest and ignore that harsh reality. It's just the sheer scale of the loss that blows my mind. More than half of all the world's rainforests gone in 100 years. How did we let that happen?
Well, it's complicated. Lots of things going on. Sadly, though, humans are at the root of it.
Okay, so who are the biggest bad guys in this deforestation story?
Agriculture is a huge one, especially these big cattle ranches and growing things like palm oil. Then there's logging, legal and illegal, all driven by the demand for wood and paper stuff. And mining plays a part too. They clear out huge areas to get resources. And of course, there's all the infrastructure, roads, dams, cities spreading out. All of that breaks up and destroys rainforest habitats.
It's hard to grasp just how big this problem is. Can you give me some examples, like things I do every day that are connected to what's happening in these far-off forests?
Think about the things you use every day. That burger you had for lunch. That beef probably came from a ranch that was once Amazon rainforest. Or your shampoo. It might have palm oil that came from plantations that replaced rainforests in Southeast Asia. These little choices, seem small, but millions of people making them adds up to a big impact on rainforests everywhere.
It's easy to feel disconnected when you're thousands of miles away, but it sounds like our everyday actions really do have consequences. Are there any hard numbers on just how much forest we're losing?
Yeah, sadly there are. The World Resources Institute thinks we're losing about 10 million hectares of forest every year. That's like an area the size of Iceland disappearing. And in 2022, the Amazon alone lost a crazy 4.1 million hectares. Bigger than Belgium.
Those numbers, wow. And that's not even counting the damage from illegal logging. It's like fighting an uphill battle all the time.
It does feel that way sometimes. But even with all that, there are glimmers of hope.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Right.
So in this kind of dark picture, where do we find those glimmers of hope?
One of the most inspiring things in all this rainforest conservation stuff is the indigenous communities. They're the real guardians of the forest. They've lived in these ecosystems for generations, sustainably, using their traditional knowledge to manage the land.
It's amazing to think about all that knowledge they have passed down for centuries, living in harmony with nature. But how many indigenous tribes are we talking about?
Just in the Amazon basin, there are more than 400 different tribes. And they're not just protecting their own land, they're protecting this incredibly valuable knowledge about living sustainably that could be so important for the future of the planet.
It's like the total opposite of those huge industrial practices that have caused so much destruction.
It really is. And sadly, these communities are often on the front lines, fighting against powerful corporations and governments to defend their homes.
It's so inspiring how strong they are in the face of all that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think, are there any specific examples of how these indigenous communities are actively protecting the rainforest?
Oh, there are so many. Like the Kayapo tribe in Brazil, they've come up with these really smart agricultural techniques where they plant special plants that add nutrients to the soil next to their crops. This helps to keep the soil healthy and prevent the kind of damage that happens with big farms that just grow one thing.
So they're not just protecting what's there, they're actually helping the forest to regenerate and become healthier.
Exactly. It just shows how deeply they understand the rainforest and how committed they are to living in balance with nature.
Their knowledge and how they do things seem like the perfect solution to all those short-sighted, money-driven approaches that have caused so much damage. But even with these guardians, it's hard not to think about all the species that are already on the verge of disappearing.
It's a tough thing to think about, for sure. Iconic species, like the orangutan, the harpy eagle, the jaguar, they're all critically endangered because they're losing their habitat, and sometimes because they're hunted. To give you an idea of how urgent this is, orangutans have lost something like 80% of their habitat in just the last 50 years.
80%. Seriously? What happens when their habitat shrinks like that?
It's all about habitat fragmentation. Think about a giant forest that's all connected, and suddenly it's chopped up into these smaller, isolated patches. That's devastating for wildlife.
I can imagine it makes it harder to find food, mates, and they're more vulnerable to predators.
Yeah.
But are there any other consequences, things that aren't so obvious?
Habitat fragmentation also reduces genetic diversity, which means species are more likely to get diseases and can't adapt to changes in the environment as well. It's like we're slowly taking away their ability to survive long term.
That paints a pretty bleak picture. It's like we're cutting their lifelines, one by one. But I'm clinging to the hope that there are some success stories out there, signs that we're starting to turn things around.
You're right to hold on to hope. There are definitely reasons to be optimistic. For example, the Amazon Region Protected Areas program has been incredibly successful, protecting more than 150 million hectares of rainforests.
Wow, that's bigger than Peru. That's a big win. Are there other examples of conservation efforts that are really making a difference?
For sure. Orangutan rehabilitation centers in Borneo are doing great work, rescuing orangutans that have been orphaned or injured and getting them ready to be released back into the wild. These are just two examples, but they show that dedicated conservation efforts can work.
It's great to hear that there are people out there fighting for these amazing animals in these irreplaceable ecosystems. But I have to ask, beyond all that ecological importance, Do rainforests have any economic benefits? Can you really put a price tag on them?
It's true that rainforests are priceless in terms of their ecological value, but they also provide trillions of dollars in what we call ecosystem services every year. Things like storing carbon, purifying water, and providing raw materials for all kinds of industries.
I'm guessing the pharmaceutical industry benefits a lot. I've heard that a lot of medicines come from rainforest plants.
You're absolutely right. Around 25% of all modern medicines are derived from rainforest plants.
25%? That's a quarter of all the medicines we use. That's mind-blowing.
It really is. Think about the rosy periwinkle. It's a delicate flower from Madagascar. Extracts from this plant have been used to develop treatments for leukemia and Hodgkin's lymphoma. Who knows how many other life-saving medicines are waiting to be discovered in these forests?
That's a powerful reminder that protecting rainforests isn't just some act of kindness, it's an act of self-preservation. We could be losing a huge library of natural remedies and cures for diseases that affect all of us.
You got it. And that leads to another important point, climate change. It's not just that deforestation contributes to climate change, but climate change is also messing with the health of rainforests themselves.
You're talking about a double whammy.
Exactly. Temperatures are rising, weather patterns are becoming more unpredictable, and that's making rainforests more susceptible to things like wildfires and droughts. This just speeds up biodiversity loss.
So it's like a vicious cycle. The same ecosystems that could help us fight climate change are also becoming more vulnerable to it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to address both problems at the same time. We have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while also protecting and restoring the rainforests we have.
And what about the illegal wildlife trade? I can't imagine that's helping these already threatened ecosystems.
Sadly, it's a huge problem. The illegal wildlife trade is worth billions of dollars, and it's driving tons of species towards extinction. A good example is the pangolin, a shy little anteater covered in scales that's become the most trafficked mammal in the world.
What makes them such a target for poachers?
Their scales are in high demand for some traditional medicine, even though there's no scientific proof that they have any medicinal value. This demand has led to a huge drop in pangolin populations all over the world.
It's heartbreaking to think about these amazing creatures being exploited like that. It feels like there's this constant tug of war between making money now and making sure things are sustainable in the long run.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And that tension is at the heart of a lot of the challenges facing rainforests.
So what do we do now? It feels like we're at a crossroads. What can we do to tip the scales towards conservation and restoration?
There are actually lots of promising strategies being developed. Protected areas are really effective at keeping large areas of rainforests safe from development and exploitation.
Okay, so protecting what we have left is a top priority. But what about the areas that are already damaged or gone?
That's where reforestation comes in. These projects are gaining momentum all over the world, helping to restore areas that have been degraded and reconnect habitats that have been fragmented.
So it's not just about preserving what we have, it's also about actively trying to bring back what's been lost.
Right.
Are there any other approaches that are showing promise?
Absolutely. Community-led initiatives are incredibly important. Empowering local people to protect their forests and manage their resources sustainably, that's turning out to be one of the most effective long-term solutions.
It makes sense. Who better to protect the forests than the people who live there and depend on them, right? It feels like collaboration is key here, getting governments, organizations, and those local communities all working together. Are there any international efforts worth mentioning?
Definitely. REDD+, which stands for Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation, that's a global initiative that's gaining a lot of traction. It basically provides financial incentives to developing countries to reduce deforestation and promote sustainable forest management.
So it's about creating economic incentives that align with conservation goals. That sounds pretty promising. What about ecotourism? Can that play a role in protecting rainforests?
Absolutely. Ecotourism, when it's done right, can generate much-needed income for local communities and also raise awareness about the importance of conservation.
So tourists get to experience the beauty of the rainforest, local communities benefit, and the ecosystem's protected. Sounds like a win-win-win. But I'm curious, with all the issues facing rainforests, what role does science and technology play in all of this?
Technology is becoming increasingly important in this fight. Scientists are using things like satellites and drones to monitor deforestation as it's happening, which gives valuable data to policymakers and conservationists.
So we're using high-tech tools to get a better grasp on the situation. Are there other ways technology is being used in this fight?
They're using artificial intelligence to analyze massive amounts of data, which helps us predict what's going to happen and figure out the most effective ways to do conservation. It's like having a crystal ball to see problems coming and find solutions faster.
It sounds like we're bringing out the big guns,
Yeah.
technologically speaking. Are there any recent discoveries that have come out of this research? Anything that gives us reason to feel hopeful?
There are new discoveries all the time. It's really exciting. Just last year, a new species of frog, the Synapteranus danta, was discovered in the Amazon. It's a tiny brown frog, but its discovery reminds us that there's so much we don't know about these amazing ecosystems, and that every effort to protect them is worth it.
I love that. Every new species we find adds another piece to the puzzle, another reason to be amazed by how complex and resilient nature is. But let's face it, the future of rainforests really depends on what we do or don't do in the coming years. What are the stakes here?
If we keep losing rainforests at this rate, the consequences are going to be dire, not just for the rainforest, but for the whole planet.
Okay, that's pretty scary.
Mhm.
What are some of the things that could happen if we fail to protect these ecosystems?
We could lose tons of species, many of which we haven't even discovered yet. Climate change will get worse, messing up weather patterns all over the world and making extreme weather events more intense. Water quality and availability will decline, impacting both people and natural ecosystems. And we'll lose a huge source of potential medicines and other valuable resources.
It's not a pretty picture, but it's a reality we need to face. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by how big this problem is and think that our individual actions don't really matter. What can we as individuals actually do to make a difference?
It's understandable to feel overwhelmed, but it's really important to remember that every action counts.
Okay, so give me some concrete steps we can take.
We can all make choices to buy less stuff that contributes to deforestation. Whenever you can, look for sustainably sourced options, whether it's food, clothes, cosmetics, or furniture.
So we need to be informed consumers and support businesses that are doing things the right way.
Exactly. And it's more than just what you buy. We can support organizations that are working hard to protect rainforests. Donate, volunteer, or just spread the word about what they're doing.
So using our voices and resources to support the people on the front lines of rainforest conservation.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of education. Learn about rainforests, share what you learn, and encourage your friends and family to make good choices.
It sounds like there are lots of ways to get involved, and even small actions can make a difference.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not in this alone. There are tons of people all over the world who care about protecting rainforests and are working hard to make a difference.
That's really encouraging to hear. So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into the world of rainforests, I want to leave our listeners with a sense of hope. We've explored the challenges and threats, but we've also seen how resilient these ecosystems are and how inspiring the efforts of those working to protect them are.
Exactly. And it's that hope that will fuel our actions and inspire us to keep fighting for a future where rainforests can thrive.
Well said. So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The fate of rainforests, and really our whole planet, depends on it.
I couldn't agree more. We all have a part to play in this story. It's amazing how those global things we talked about are so connected to what local communities are doing.
Like a whole bunch of people all over the world working toward the same goal. Not just policies from the top down, but like a movement from the bottom up, too.
Exactly. Remember all those indigenous tribes in the Amazon, like over 400 of them? They're not just protecting their own land and how they live, but they're protecting all that knowledge about living sustainably, which could be like a model for the whole world.
Yeah, it's so different from all that big industry stuff that caused so much damage in the first place.
You got it. A lot of times, those indigenous communities are the ones right there on the front lines, fighting against these big companies and even governments, all to protect their homes.
And let's be real, they're facing some huge challenges, like their whole existence is threatened in some cases. That takes serious guts.
You can tell how deeply connected they are to the rainforest by how strong they are. They get it, maybe more than anyone, that what happens to these forests is tied to what happens to us.
Speaking of things being connected,
Yeah.
I keep thinking about those rainforest rivers we were talking about. They're not just pretty to look at, they're essential for so many species and communities.
Absolutely. Just the Amazon River alone has over 3,000 types of fish that we know of and provides water for millions of people.
It's mind-boggling how huge these rivers are. I mean, the impact they have on everything around them.
They're not just water, they're like arteries, you know? They carry all the nutrients that keep things alive and they shape the whole landscape. And their health depends directly on the health of the rainforest around them.
It really shows how Something happening way over there can affect us over here. We can't pretend these things aren't all connected.
Exactly. For example, if rainforests in the Amazon disappear, that can change rainfall patterns all the way over in North America.
Wow, seriously. It really is all linked together.
Yeah, it's all these complicated relationships, and we're just starting to figure them out.
Which brings us back to climate change. Aside from the obvious stuff about deforestation, how is climate change directly affecting rainforests themselves?
It's a multifaceted problem. As temperatures rise, for instance, droughts happen more often and they're more intense, and that makes rainforests more vulnerable to wildfires. Plus, changes in rainfall can really mess up the delicate balance of these ecosystems.
So it's not just that rainforests help fight climate change, it's that they're also feeling the effects of it more and more.
You got it. And as they get weaker, they can't absorb as much carbon dioxide, which just makes climate change worse. It's a nasty cycle that affects everyone.
You mentioned those ecosystem services earlier. Can we talk more about that? I want to understand the real benefits that rainforests give us.
Oh, absolutely. People don't always think about it, but it's super important to understanding what rainforests are really worth. I mean, beyond the stuff we get directly, like wood and all those medicinal plants, they do so much for all of us.
Give me some examples, something I can relate to.
Think about clean water. Rainforests are like natural filters, cleaning the water we drink and use for our crops. And they're super important in regulating the water cycle, preventing floods and droughts.
So healthy rainforests mean a more reliable water supply for everyone. That's a big deal.
Huge. And that's just one thing. Rainforests also help prevent soil erosion, keep the climate stable, and even provide inspiration and cultural value. The list goes on and on.
It's like we're just scratching the surface of what rainforests do for us. Makes all those deforestation numbers even scarier.
It's true. When we lose rainforests, it's not just trees that disappear. We're losing a system that supports life on the whole planet.
It's scary, but I'm wondering, has anyone tried to put an actual dollar value on these ecosystem services?
They have. It's not easy to do, but some estimates say that the services provided by rainforests could be worth trillions of dollars every year.
Trillions. That's more than a lot of countries make. Shows that protecting rainforests isn't just about the environment. It's about the economy, too.
You got it. But a lot of times, those short-term profits end up being more important than what's sustainable in the long run. It's frustrating to see how money can drive deforestation.
Like that saying, penny wise and pound foolish, right? Are there any ways to encourage rainforest conservation and make it actually make financial sense?
There are some good initiatives out there. Sustainable forestry, for example, can bring in money while also minimizing damage to the environment.
Right, like carefully choosing which trees to cut down instead of clearing out entire forests.
Exactly. And ecotourism, when it's done responsibly, can be profitable for local communities and give them a reason to protect the rainforest.
So it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can have economic growth and protect rainforests if we do it right.
You got it. It means changing how we think, realizing that the health of the planet is tied to our own well-being.
That's a message we need to hear for sure. But besides policy changes and all that economic stuff, what can regular people do to help with rainforest conservation? Like me, sitting here, what can I do to make a difference?
It's a question a lot of people ask. The truth is, even small things can have a big impact. We can all think about the things we buy and try to get sustainably sourced stuff whenever we can.
So be smart shoppers and support companies that share our values.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just shopping. We can support organizations that protect rainforests, talk to our friends and family about it, and even make changes in our own lives to lessen our impact on the environment.
It's a good reminder that we're not helpless. Every action, even if it seems small, can be part of a bigger movement.
Remember that whole thing about banning plastic straws? It started small, but it got so big that it led to actual policy changes and people changing their habits. The same thing can happen with rainforest conservation.
It shows that when we work together, we can create real change. But with all the problems facing rainforests, is there really reason to be hopeful? Can we actually fix the damage that's been done?
It's a big job, no doubt. But I really believe there's hope. More and more people are understanding how important rainforests are, technology's getting better, and so many people and groups all over the world are dedicated to this. That's progress.
It's good to hear that. It feels like more and more people are realizing that rainforests are important not just for the planet, but for us too.
That's the key. As more people get it, the stronger the movement to protect them will be.
And like we talked about, technology is playing a big role in all of this. Scientists are coming up with all these amazing ways to monitor rainforests, see where deforestation's happening, and study all those intricate relationships in those ecosystems.
It's like having a whole toolbox to help us understand and protect rainforests better than ever.
So it's not just good intentions anymore. We're getting the knowledge and tools to really make a difference. Are there any technological advancements that you're especially excited about?
Oh, there are so many. One that really stands out is using drones and satellites to keep an eye on rainforests. We can get tons of data, from high-res pictures to really detailed info about the forest structure and all the different species living there.
Like having eyes in the sky watching over these precious places 24/7.
You got it. And that data is so important for conservation work. It helps us see which areas are in trouble, track how well different strategies are working, and be more strategic in our approach.
And it keeps people accountable. Those who are cutting down trees can't hide as easily anymore.
Exactly. And technology isn't just about catching deforestation in action. It's also helping us study all that incredible biodiversity in rainforests. That's leading to the discovery of new species, a better understanding of how everything's connected, and new ideas for conservation.
It's like opening up a whole new world of possibilities. Are there any recent discoveries from this research that you find particularly exciting or inspiring?
There are always new discoveries, which is awesome. One that comes to mind is they found this giant ancient tree in the Amazon rainforest. It's called Denitzia excelsa, and it's over 88 meters tall. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty. They think it's somewhere between 400 and 600 years old.
Whoa! Imagine all the stories that tree could tell. It really shows how resilient and long-lived these ecosystems are.
I know, right? And it reminds us how much we still don't know about rainforests, how much there is to discover and protect.
Yeah.
Every new species, every ancient tree like that just highlights how urgent this all is.
It's both humbling and inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to ask, with all the stuff rainforests are up against, can we realistically be optimistic about their future? Is it even possible to fix all the damage?
It's a huge challenge, no question. But I truly believe we have reason to be hopeful. More and more people are realizing how important rainforests are, technology is getting better, and there are tons of people and organizations around the world working so hard. We're moving in the right direction.
That's really good to hear. It feels like we're gaining momentum, that we're not powerless in all of this. We can all do something, whether it's our own choices, supporting conservation efforts, or speaking up for policies that protect these amazing ecosystems.
And all those actions, when we combine them, can be a powerful force for good. We've seen it happen with other environmental issues, and there's no reason why it can't happen with rainforests.
There's a message of hope and empowerment that we all need to hear. So as we head into the final part of our deep dive into the world of rainforests, I want to leave our listeners feeling that positive change is possible. We've talked about the problems, the threats, all the complicated stuff, but we've also seen how beautiful, resilient, and truly amazing these ecosystems are.
That feeling of wonder is what should drive us. Protecting rainforests isn't just about saving trees. It's about protecting the future of our planet and our own.
It's about understanding that we're all connected, that what happens to these forests affects us all.
It's about taking on the challenge, working together, and never losing hope.
It's like that saying, right? We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children.
Exactly what we do now, that's the world future generations will have.
I think it's easy to get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
thinking that whatever I do won't really make a difference.
No, not at all. Every choice we make, every little thing, it all adds up. And when millions of people make those choices, it really multiplies.
So instead of feeling helpless, it's about feeling like we can actually do something.
Right. Recognizing that we all have a part to play in this, protecting our planet. And there are so many ways to do that.
Some people might give money to those conservation groups.
Yeah, or maybe volunteer their time, their skills.
Others might focus on changing their own lives.
Right. Cutting back on what they buy, choosing sustainable products, or even just learning more about these issues.
It's about finding what works for each of us.
Yeah, what we believe in.
And then actually doing something about it.
And don't forget, even small steps can turn into big changes. That Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has."
So powerful. And it reminds us that we're not in this fight alone. There are so many people all over the world who really care about saving rainforests. They're dedicating their lives to making a difference.
And they are making a difference.
Yeah, we're seeing progress. Reforestation is picking up steam.
Protected areas are getting bigger.
Sustainable practices are becoming more common. That's what gives me hope.
Me too. It shows that even with all these challenges, we can still be optimistic.
Yeah, because this is about so much more than just trees. It's about protecting all those interconnected forms of life that we depend on.
It's about making sure that future generations can see the wonder and beauty of these forests, just like we have.
It's about understanding that our own well-being is tied to the health of our planet.
Protecting rainforests isn't just the right thing to do, it's about protecting ourselves.
So true. As I wrap up this deep dive into the world of rainforests, I want you to feel that sense of urgency, but also hold on to that hope.
We decide what the future looks like. We have the power to change things.
Our actions matter, every single one. And together, we can make a real difference.
The fate of rainforests, the fate of our planet, it's in our hands. We need to choose wisely.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. I hope you learned some new stuff, feel inspired to do something, and maybe even appreciate those magical rainforests even more. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep fighting for a greener, healthier future for everyone.